And of course, this is a requirement. We need to do this at least once a year, and it's always good to brush up so we know where we all stand and everything. Because there's a lot of questions, not only for us but also with the youth that we work with. So far, from what I understand, our workshops have been really wonderful. I've gotten a lot of feedback, and it's all positive so far. And I'm looking forward to today to hear today's, and I know you are too. So, enjoy our workshop this morning, and I know we're all going to learn a lot. This would be great. So, thank you, Karen, so much for putting us on with Jackie. We look
Oh,
forward to it.
absolutely. Thank you, Governor Mary. So officially, welcome everybody to your final day of mid-year. You survived, or at least assuming you make it for the next 2 hours, you will have survived. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Karen Church, and among my other titles, I'm your incoming Leadership Development Coordinator. I'm super happy to be here this morning to facilitate a practical training on applying the Kiwanis Youth Protection Guidelines and best practices. You know, sometimes I sense a tendency in Kiwanis for people to think youth protection training is what somebody else has to do. You know, I don't work with Builders Club. Why do I need to do youth protection training? And to that I say, if you're a member of an organization whose motto is serving the children of the world, youth protection is every member's concern. In the Southwest District, we've had years and years of youth protection training where we sit for an hour and the rules are presented to us. And that's great because we all need to know the rules, but that's only half the battle. The purpose of today's training is to put you guys in a position of needing to apply those rules in 7 different scenarios. With us today, all the way from the great District of Michigan, is Jackie Wickham. Some of you probably know, BK Knappenberger is our Southwest District Youth Protection Manager. He could not be with us today because he's off exploring the world. And Jackie has so graciously volunteered to step in his absence. So everybody help me welcome Jackie. And Jackie, if you'd like to say hi and introduce yourself to the Southwest.
Oh, good morning. Yes, I'm in Michigan and it is 38 degrees this morning, cloudy, but a little warmer than it's your area. I am the Youth Protection Manager for Michigan, a former middle school principal, a former lieutenant governor, part of the Hillsdale Club, and we are celebrating our 100th year this year. So it's nice to be with you today.
That's fantastic. Excellent. Well, and we really do appreciate you stepping in. So here's what we're going to do this morning, or at least what we're going to try to do this morning, is Jackie and I have a series of scenarios for you. We're going to share each scenario one by one, and then connected to each of the scenarios is a series of discussion questions. So after each scenario is revealed, we're going to break you into random small groups and send you to breakout rooms. Once you're in your breakout room, we'd like your group to review the scenario that was just presented. We're going to do one scenario at a time and discuss the questions relating to it. We'll give you 5 minutes. We're going to try 5 minutes at first. We may need to either up that or down that, depending on how the conversation goes. But you're going to have 5 minutes for a small group discussion on the questions, the discussion questions. So this morning's workshop is going to be part youth protection training and part time management. You're going to need to stay on topic in your breakout rooms if you're going to get through the discussion questions in 5 minutes. Save your anecdotes and your general questions. We'll have time for that later in the presentation, and just stay 100% focused on the discussion questions connected to each scenario. Before you leave your breakout rooms, we're going to ask you to designate one person to be your group spokesperson for that scenario. After 5 minutes, we're going to close the breakout rooms. We're all going to come back together in this general session where each spokesman will briefly share the highlights of your group's discussion. Then we're going to call in our expert, Jackie, who's going to share the official Kiwanis youth protection policy applications to that scenario. and review any best practices. So in other words, we're going to test to see how well you guys did. We're going to repeat this process of the breakout rooms for each scenario until we get through all 7 of our scenarios. Now, I do want to say, chances are there's going to be times over the next 2 hours when you get something wrong. And that's okay. You know, keep in mind, it doesn't matter what knowledge you came into this meeting with. What matters is what knowledge you leave with. Now, to help make sure that everybody has the discussion questions when we're in the breakout rooms, because you're not going to see the slides that I'm going to be presenting once you go to your breakout rooms. I'd like everybody to find the chat feature, the little chat icon in your Zoom. And if it's not currently open, please open it. And in that chat, I am now posting a link. And I'd like you to open that link. You can minimize it, or you can scoot it over to the side, but you're going to need that once you go to your breakout room. Did anybody have problems accessing the link? So, scenario number 1, your Kiwanis Club is very excited to sponsor 2 students to attend Key Leader at Camp Kiwanis over Veterans Day weekend. You could use a vacation in the Pines, so you volunteer to drive. Your discussion questions are, do you need a Kiwanis International background screen? Do you need to complete Kiwanis International chaperone training? What do you need from the students' parents? And then we're going to throw a little twist to our scenario. The day before you are scheduled to leave, one of the students cancels. What happens to your trip? And then discuss, assuming your 5 minutes allows, what are some other best practices for you driving these students to Camp Kiwanis? All right, anybody have any questions about the procedure that we're going to use or the scenario? That was fun to pop in and hear you guys were having some good discussions here. I was nervous that you guys were all going to be shy and not talk to each other, but everybody seemed to be having good conversations. Welcome back.
So does the group stay together, or is it going to be random for the next one?
Well, so Steve, do you want to hear what our plan is or what reality might be?
No, neither is important.
So our plan, our hope is that you guys stay together, but Zoom reality may teach us otherwise.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we've got everybody back. Excellent. First question is, did you guys feel like your conversation was terribly rushed with 5 minutes? Do we need to extend that?
Nope.
Okay. There will be some scenarios that we get to that are going to require longer periods of time. So there will be longer periods of time, but I'm glad to hear that nobody was rushed. All right. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask for volunteers, your spokesperson from each of your groups. And maybe what we'll do is we'll have the spokesperson address one of the discussion questions, and then we'll move around to the other groups. And then we're going to hear from Jackie on whether we got it right or not. So who wants to volunteer first to answer? Do you need a Kiwanis International background screen to take these kids to Camp Kiwanis? Alfie, I see your hand.
Okay, I was in group 1 and the answer is definitely yes. Yes and yes.
All right, excellent. Does everybody know where you go about requesting to get a Kiwanis International background screen if you are volunteering to be the driver?
Talk to your club secretary.
Excellent. Yes. Talk to your club secretary. Now, if you are already like the advisor for an SLP for Key Club or Builders Club or K Kids, you probably already have that background screen. But if you are a newer member, or maybe this is your first time taking a role with the students, all you have to do is ask your Kiwanis Club secretary and they can order the background screen for you. All right,
Okay.
Jackie, how'd they do on that answer?
fantastic. That was a good
Excellent.
answer, yes.
Just
Well
a
done,
short
group one.
question here.
Yes.
Short question. What if your secretary's new?
Excellent. So, if your secretary is new, then we want to do a couple of things. We want to make sure that your secretary has the training resources necessary to navigate the entire secretary dashboard. But that secretary dashboard is where he or she will go to find the member, and there's a button. Probably when you guys are in your next round, I will pull up a secretary dashboard if I can and show you what that looks like.
Thank you.
That was an excellent question. All right. Yeah, and CK also suggests, in Kiwanis, some of you may not know kind of the system beyond your home club. We have divisions, and each division is headed by a lieutenant governor who can help connect the officers in that division to the resources that they need to do their job. So if you're ever at a loss for what do you need to do, your lieutenant governors can be a great resource for you. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On that first question, if there were one kid, then you'd need 2 adults.
You're jumping ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes, we will
Is that-
get there. We will get there.
Okay, yeah, all right, because I have a question when you get to it.
I do have-
Excellent. So,
I have a
yeah.
question on the certifications that I've got mine. I just joined the Kiwanis. Is that one time forever, or do you have to renew that occasionally?
Oh,
2 years.
excellent question, Rusty. It is good for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
At least currently, they're good for 2 years. The world of background screens is like this continuously evolving nebulous process. And like my hope, and I'm sure Jackie's hope, is that someday we get to the point where there's like a rating system for background screens, and we know that this is locked in. You do it every 2 years. Right now, we just have an evaluation, and we work with Kiwanis International works with their consultants, and right now they're saying 2 years is good. So every 2 years.
Karen,
right.
can I add something real quick?
Of course, Mary.
On the secretary dashboard over there, there's a column for background checks. So it's up to her to let the people know when they are due for them. So that's just something I learned when I was the secretary. So that way, at least it was with me when they're about due, when they're going to be expired and everything. So you can let that person know they need to get their background check redone again.
Yeah, and I think, it probably depends on the role that person plays. If they are an SLP advisor, I would hope that the secretary is being diligent in watching the deadlines for those screens. If they're a person like we have in our scenario number 1, who is doing a one-off drive of students to key leader, they may not be on the secretary's radar as somebody who always needs to have a background screen. So it's probably a good practice for any member before they undertake an activity with youth, chaperoning youth, to just double check that they have that screen. And everybody can do that by their Kiwanis Connect account. And I will, while we're in our next break, I will pull up a Kiwanis Connect account so that you guys can see what that looks like and how the secretary can see what the status is. But let's go to question number 2. So Alfie was group 1. Who was group 2? Or do you guys even know what group you were? Lynette?
Yeah, we were in group 2.
All right. What about chaperone training for this driver?
Oh, chaperone, we're skipping to that. Okay, so we believe so, but we weren't familiar with what it was. So
All right. Well, let's
yes,
call it
and
the
what
answer.
is it is our
Yeah.
official response.
Excellent. Jackie, what can you tell us about chaperone training?
Okay, Kiwanis has contracted with Presidium Academy to do our trainings. There are 7 different sections, but for this particular chaperone training, you would need 3 of those sessions or classes. Those are free to any Kiwanis member. And if you go on the Kiwanis.org/youth protection site, it's going to come up and give you all sorts of information, and the Presidium training is included there. You would need the classes abuse risk management for volunteers, social media safety, and preventing sexual activity among adolescents. And those are good for 2 years.
Jackie,
Excellent.
quick question. When was that instituted in Kiwanis International? How long ago?
I think it was introduced maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah, because I, pre-COVID, drove some of the kids up, the key clubbers, up to camp. And all I had to do was fill out a form, and they did a check to make sure I was okay. And they said, you're approved, you can drive. So I'm glad they changed that, because that's a lot more in depth.
Yeah,
You didn't check close enough, Harry.
it is.
I was in the front seat. They were safe.
Definitely a post-COVID development. Yeah. And Steve was being shy, but I'm gonna call him out because he put an excellent question in the chat. And his question, and it was a private message to me, so I'm gonna share it with everybody because it was so good. Do we allow non-member volunteers, and how do we get them a background check? That's an excellent question, because we do often have parents volunteer to drive our key clubbers places. And so Jackie, do you know that answer? That's a technical question, so I can jump in if you don't know the answer to that.
Yes, they would need a background check. And in order to get that, they can go on to the Kiwanis.org site. Or I have been telling my people in Michigan, because some of them needed to get their background checks done quickly. And sometimes, getting into the sites was a little hard for some of them. So I would say go straight to safehiringsolutions.com. And if you click on there, it will come up for Kiwanis, and you'll click on Kiwanis, and then they can do the background check. They'll send their email, and Safe Hiring Solutions will send the information back to them to complete a background check.
Excellent. Thank you, Jackie. And I can let you know, when we're talking about non-Kiwanis volunteers at an event like Key Club District Convention or the Key Club International Convention, we, as the district administrative team, usually take care of rounding up the names and email addresses of all of those volunteers and sending them off for their screening and their training. So if it's that scenario, usually that's taken care of, at least in the Southwest, by the Key Club admin team. But if you have an individual event that your club is doing, or a scenario like we have here, where it's going to Key Leader, if you're using a non-Kiwanis person, the secretary is not going to have them in the dashboard to order a screen. So Jackie's suggestion of going to Safe Hiring Solutions directly, or there's always background checks at Kiwanis.org is their branded email if you have questions about background checks and getting them ordered for your non-Kiwanis volunteers. Alfie, you have a question.
Yes, I do have a question. And I hadn't thought of it before. Let's say you're going to Camp Kiwanis for the weekend for a key leader training or camp cleanup or whatever. And an outside company needs to be engaged to perhaps provide the food and the meals. You're bringing in a catering service that's going to be doing the cooking for us, or I'm not sure what other scenarios. Maybe you're bringing in some ropes course professionals, semi-professionals that are going to be involved. Are those people getting background checks?
Excellent question.
Are we not allowed to engage those third-party sources?
Yeah, excellent question. Jackie, do you understand the question? You have any thoughts?
Yes, I think when those third-party people would be contracted, background checks would need to be required from them for their companies. And if they were going to be interacting with youth, let's say in the kitchen area, then I think in our district, it would be required that they would have our background checks.
And I would say that that's probably the key, right, Jackie, is if they're interacting with our youth.
Yes.
If they are, obviously at Key Club district conventions, you have the catering departments of the hotel, you have the registration desk, you have all of the hotel employees. They are not background checked. They're not engaged. They're there performing their jobs. They're not engaging in the programming with the students. But if you are mixing your students in, let's say that you wanted to have part of a Key Club program at Camp Kiwanis is teaching people catering. And so you're using the kitchen up there and you've brought in somebody to train these kids how to cater. That person would need to be background screened. Is that fair to say, Jackie?
Yes, that'd be fair to say. If they were not background checked by Kiwanis at that point, then having one or two of your background check Kiwanis advisors, faculty advisors in the area would be appropriate too.
All right, excellent. So if you have your students interacting with, let's call them contractors, you have your students interacting with contractors who you don't know what the status of their background screen is, have some of your people who are screened there to control the environment to make sure that we're complying with everything Kiwanis wants us to. All right, Lynette, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, so on the Kiwanis faculty advisor, are they required to do the chaperone training as well?
They are, but let's hold
Okay.
off on that because we've got a scenario just for faculty advisors coming up.
But are they required to do the background check? Because my understanding was
Yes.
they do.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have an entire scenario for faculty
thank you.
advisors. Yeah, done.
One thing, when I was governor-elect under Harry, who's by the way so much older than I am, is Kiwanis wants everybody to go through them. And I called them one time because we had some issues and I got into it with a couple people. They want to know when the clearances are due, so they make sure they notify you when you have your clearances. So you can't go through anybody else. And you got to go through safe hiring to get the background check done. And they want to know what's going on, and they can notify you that every 2 years you're required, because that was an issue 4 years ago.
Yeah, and that's part of, this whole giant spectrum that Jackie spends her Kiwanis life in dealing with the youth protection is, Safe Hiring Solutions is awesome. And that's who Kiwanis has contracted with. So it provides the benefit that you say that Kiwanis can import that data and have working knowledge. It also, I told Don, was it yesterday that we were talking that he can no longer tease me about being an attorney because I'm retired, but being a previous attorney, I can tell you that the other benefit that Kiwanis has is it now has this universal baseline that anybody that's working with students in its programs has to satisfy to interact with our students. And yes, those of you who are Key Club advisors probably have like fingerprint screens and greater quality screens with the school districts that you work with. But for Kiwanis, we need to know that everybody meets this minimum standard of screening, and that we can track it. So that's why we have the Safe Hiring Solutions. And that's why, as we'll get to in a minute, Lynette, why everybody in certain scenarios has to have that screening. Kat, I see you have a question.
Yes, so we have students that have to do or have volunteer hours. If that student is still in high school, but they're just turning 18, are they still going to have to get a background check too if they want to volunteer to help out with our group?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Jackie, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, our chaperones have to be 21 years of age, so I would say no for the 18-year-old student.
Okay. So they don't have to have a background screen, but perhaps you have one of your screen people supervising
Right.
what's going on. All right, let's move on. A group that hasn't answered yet, what do you need from the students' parents? Or do you need anything from the students' parents?
So group 3, we decided that you would need a letter from the parents saying that it would be okay for them to be transported by you. And of course, you should get at least 2 copies, one for you and then one to give to the key leader so that they would have it on file as well.
Excellent. Not only an answer, but how many numbers of copies? Jackie, what do you think of that answer?
Okay, a good answer. There is a form. The school systems will have a transportation form for their students. Plus Kiwanis International has a transportation form that you can download and have the parents sign and do the same thing with the 2 copies.
How do you download that? Any particular area in the Kiwanis, website?
I think it's just under the youth protection area. I tell my clubs though, because I do have problems with lots of different sites, I go to Google and I just type in KI transportation form and it will take me right to the transportation form.
Okay.
Same thing with the medication form.
And Bob, your district Key Club administrator may also have a version of the form if you contacted her.
Okay.
So excellent. So we want to have something from the parents indicating that it's okay for the students to travel with you. And there's a question in the chat about whether it needs to be signed. And I would say yes, that it needs to be signed. You know, the world is moving away from wet signatures. So if you have one version that's signed and circulated by PDF and email to everybody that needs a copy, that should be more than adequate. All right, so the next question.
Karen, I can tell
Yes.
you in our group, because this was brought up, I did get the question of, well, what about CKI? Because of course they're in college. And I said, well, if they're over 18, then you wouldn't need a background check, or you wouldn't need the permission. But if they are under 18, you do need it from the parents. And I've had that situation happen a couple of times where I've had to ask the parent for permission for that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I would say as well that in the Key Club scenario, we may have some students that are 18, but I still, even though they are 18, because they're still in high school and living with their parents, I still ask for something signed from their parents. So the age may come in to factor, but don't necessarily assume just because a student is 18 that you don't need to worry about parents anymore. But yeah, I think it's probably safe once they're at college. If they're over 18, they're at least semi-autonomous. Alfie, did you have a question?
Yes, with regard to blended families these days, of which there are so many, when it comes to those signatures on those documents, how many are needed? Because sometimes it's difficult. You've got parents who are living in different states
Yeah,
and maybe not
you are,
cooperating.
yeah, you're never going to be in a position to know who the appropriate signer is. You're going to take the signature that's provided for you, and if they did not have authority, then the parents can battle it out. You're never going to be able to work through that mess. So Lynn has an excellent question in the chat. Since we're talking about forms from parents, do you need permission slips from the school and Kiwanis as well? And I think that depends on what event you're transporting students to. Key Leader is not a school function. You might have students, obviously you're going to have students from a particular school attending, but unless they're using school funds to attend, they're just attending as a kid. So the school wouldn't necessarily have a say in that. But if you're talking about Key Club District Convention, that's an event where students attend as representatives of their school. And so the school probably has forms that are involved. You know, and that's an excellent, I think we're gonna come back to this in a different scenario, is when you are working, especially as an advisor to a student leadership program, you're living in two worlds. You're living in the school world and you're living in the Kiwanis world, and you have to comply with both worlds. So if the school needs you to do something as a Kiwanis advisor, you have to do it, even if that's higher standard than what Kiwanis wants. Let's go on to the next, which I think is the greatest subject of discussion question, if my understanding from bopping around the rooms is true. The day before one of the students gets sick and cannot go, what happens to your trip? Which group is going to volunteer to answer this one?
Well, that's the fourth question. I'm in group 4. I was a volunteer spokesperson. So anyway, you will have to have 2 adults in that car. And one, this is one little fuzzy area. One will have to be pass the chaperone test. And the other one needs a background test. We're not sure if both of them need to be chaperone checked or not, but it's, you know, you will have to have 2 adults in the car.
And the official answer, Jackie?
Well, I guess I would suggest that it would be 2 students with the adult that has the background check and the Presidium training. But 2 adults are also, but then I would work on having 2 students if possible. We're seeing a lot of different scenarios across the country right now that are coming up with our young people. And so for protection for our Kiwanis member and our youth, we want to make sure that we have them covered. It was set up that the adult with the 2 students would be chaperoning and driving them to the event, and they should be sitting in the back seat. Suggestion with Key Club members, you could always have a 3rd alternate in case one was not able to go. One would be ready to take that person's place, and then also have another adult that would have a background check that could go along if needed.
But isn't the question is about if a student cancels? So we're assuming we've got 2 adults in that car, and you've got, let's say it's up in the top description, it says you got 2 students going. So if you have a student drop out, now you've got 2 adults and 1 student. That's the problem.
Okay, so decision would be in accordance with your local laws and the school policies. But for 1 student to be in the car alone, you know, that's, I don't know, Karen, what do you say?
You know, this is an area where you have 2 things. You have the youth protection policies and procedures, which give you a choice. They say you operate under the rule of 3s, or you get parent permission. So, you know, if we're looking at strictly KI policy and our scenario where you, and let's assume in our scenario, you is a singular you, so not 2 adults. It's you as an adult and 2 students, we're going to go to Camp Kiwanis. And 1 student drops out, you now no longer have the rule of 3s. So according to KI policy, you have to get parent permission. That's one world. The other world is best practices. And best practices is to always have backup in the car, as Jackie was talking about. You know, have 2 adults in the car, 2 students in the car. Don't rely on that paper that the parent signed saying that they know that you're going to be the only person in the car. And the reason we call it best practices is because it is what you can do to make sure, or at least give you the most likelihood that nothing's going to come back to bite you, or make sure that the student is safe. You know, youth protection goes both ways. It protects the organization and it protects the students. And so having the 2 adults in the car with the student, or 2 students in the car with the adult, you know, working with that rule of 3s is one part of the Kiwanis policy. Getting parent approval, if you can't do that, is the other part of the Kiwanis policy. But best practices say, let's go even further. And let's make sure that there's somebody, another adult who has your back. Should students say something happened, you have an eyewitness that says, you know, this is really what went down. Or, you know, you have another adult making sure that nothing goes on with the students. So a lot of what we get into in youth protection is, what does the policy say? What can you do to best protect yourself with best practices? So does that help? You know, our policy gives a little lesser standard, rule of 3 or parent permission, but best practices make sure that you have another adult or multiple students in the car with you. Harry.
Had the situation, as I was mentioning before, pre-COVID, where we had 2 adults and 2 students from the same school, and there was another car with 2 adults and 2 students. One of those students took ill, and they moved one of those students into my car. So there were 2 adults and 3 children. We had a pretty big car, so it was comfortable, and that was allowable. So I want to make sure, is that still?
Oh yeah,
okay?
Yeah, and I mean, not only is that allowable under the KI policy, which says rule of 3 or parent permission, but that also gets your best practices because you have 2 adults and lots of kids. So yeah, that's definitely good. And there are things that you can do. I had to transport a student to Tucson for Kiwanis District Convention. And even though I transport Key Club board members all the time and have parent permission to do so, even if it's just one student in my car, that was a long ways to drive with one student. So I drafted my mom to come to convention with me. So there are things that you can do to satisfy the best practices, which is a higher standard than the Kiwanis policy is currently written.
And Karen, that is tied into the question I had earlier, being that I was the other adult in the car. I was not an adult who had chaperone training. So do I count?
Well, we're going to get to in our, is it our next one? Let me see. Nope, not our next one. In our scenario number 3, I think we're going to talk all about chaperone training. So I think we covered scenario 1 very thoroughly, and we even touched on some issues that'll come back. So I know we spent a lot of time on scenario 1. Let's move on to scenario 2. We're going to break down into our groups again. Your scenario this time is member of your Kiwanis Club is being honored at the Key Club District Convention. So 4 members of your Kiwanis Club sign up to attend the convention to celebrate your friend's accomplishments. You and your friends aren't going to be staying the whole weekend, but you are going to be staying Saturday night at the hotel after the award ceremony. So the scenario is you as a Kiwanian are going to the Key Club District Convention because, let's say it's the Kiwanis advisor for your Key Club is getting recognized with some award. So do you, as that guest Kiwanian, need a background screen? Do you need to complete the chaperone training? And then it gets interesting. Can you and your club mates go to the bar for a drink to celebrate the award? Does it change the situation if you have that drink in your hotel room? And any other best practices? All right, so now we're going to find out what happens when we reopen the breakout room. Excellent. All right. Well, hopefully you guys are making some new friends and having some good discussions in your group. All right. So here we are back to the world of Key Club District Convention. And you have your fellow Kiwanian who's getting recognized and you want to go celebrate their big day. Who wants to answer? Do you, as a guest Kiwanian at the Key Club District Convention, need a background screen? Alfie, what's your group say?
Our group says, no, it's not required, but it's encouraged.
All right, Jackie.
Good answer. Yes.
All right, you're okay with that? All right.
Yes. Yeah, the more Kiwanis members that have the background check, you know, the better off you are. We want to protect ourselves and the youth, but it's not required for the one night stay.
And Jackie, does it change your answer if Alfie and her friends from her Kiwanis Club are staying in hotel rooms that were blocked by the Key Club district?
For one night, they're okay without the background check.
Okay.
But if they would stay for the entire convention, then yes, they would need a background check.
All right, excellent. What about chaperone training? Next group, who's a spokesman for another group? Don't be shy. All right, James.
We would say no.
Jackie?
That's correct.
Ding,
If
ding,
you
ding.
are a chaperone, then you would need the Presidium Academy training. If you are not the chaperone, if you are just there visiting, you would not necessarily need it.
All right, so perhaps we can state a concept that just because you are an adult at a youth event does not make you a chaperone. Is that a fair statement, Jackie?
Correct.
All right, excellent. Now the next one, you and your friends want to take your award-winning Kiwanis faculty advisor to the bar for a drink. What are we saying to that?
So unfortunately, you guys, the people that are not there for the whole convention could go for a drink, but the Key Club advisor would not be able to go with you to have a drink.
Jackie, how do you feel about that answer?
Well, looking at the policies and procedures, it does say attending any Kiwanis event that is produced primarily by or for the benefit of youth, adults are expected to refrain from using or being under the influence of alcohol. You know, you've got different scenarios with you're not in the block where the Key Club members are. You know, that's one thing, but the policy does say to refrain if you are at an event. I think you mentioned that the Kiwanis advisor would definitely need to refrain. But let's say that some of those Kiwanis members you walk back into the Key Club, they're having a big dance at the end of their event, and you go back into that event. You would not want to return to that event if you have been drinking alcohol.
All right, does the answer change for you, Jackie, if the Kiwanians, let's say they have a suite, and instead of going to the bar, they retire to the suite and have a drink?
Well, if that's in the block where the Key Club members are, then the answer would stay the same. If they're in a separate part of the hotel and they're not going back where any Kiwanis Key Club members are, you know, that's going to be a personal decision, I think, on those Kiwanis members. But you are still representing a Key Club or a Kiwanis Club. You're there for the Key Club members and your member that was being honored, and it is part of our policies to refrain.
Excellent. So maybe take your award-winning Kiwanis friend out for a drink when you get home from Key Club District Convention. All right. Excellent. So let's move on to scenario number 3. This is a two-parter. So let's do 8 minutes on this one, Ken. What we're going to do here is we're going to compare and contrast 2 different chaperone issues. Scenario A, Your Key Club is volunteering at Kiwanis Kids Day at the fair. There are 3 young men and 11 young ladies attending. They will be at the fairgrounds from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Friday. That's our scenario A. Our scenario B is your Key Club is attending district convention. Same group of kids. We got 3 young men, 11 young ladies attending. They will be spending 2 nights at the hotel. Your discussion is going to be under Kiwanis International policy. How many chaperones do you need for each scenario? Do the chaperones need to be a certain sex? If the faculty advisor is chaperoning, do they need a Kiwanis International background screen? And then how do school policies come into play? Remember, we talked that when you are dealing with the world of our service leadership programs, you're living in 2 different worlds, the school world and the Kiwanis world. So how do school policies come into play when determining your chaperones? So did you go to the same group? Were the same people in there? All right, excellent. So you guys are becoming fast and furious friends. Let's return you to your groups. We're going to go 8 minutes this time for you to discuss these scenarios. If you didn't figure it out in the last breakout room, that link that I shared at the beginning with that Google document, it has all the scenarios. You just have to scroll forward to find this scenario number 3. All right, so we'll see you back in 8 minutes. All right, everybody, welcome back. So obviously this scenario is dealing with the 2 different rules that Kiwanis International policy has for chaperones, and the number and gender of those chaperones. So which group wants to share their discussion on how many chaperones we need for scenario A or scenario B? Who was in, oh, Alfie, you always volunteer. Who was in group 5?
I don't know.
That was Art, James, Kat, Owner, and Rusty.
Yeah, group 5. We kind of debated about the ratios of chaperones or adults, but we sort of came down to 1 guy and was it 4 ladies to chaperone?
And James, was that for each scenario or was that?
Yeah, we applied it for both actually, but.
All right. Well, Jackie got temporarily disconnected, so let me summarize. We are working on question number 1, which is how many chaperones do we need for each of the scenarios? And group 5 thought that we needed 1 male, 1 female. Is that what you said, James?
1 male, 4 females.
1 male, 4 females?
Yeah.
All right, for each scenario. No. Jackie, how would Kiwanis International policies interpret the chaperones for each of those scenarios?
Okay, for scenario A, Kiwanis would say 1 chaperone for 50 students. And for scenario B, it would be 1 for the male chaperone and 2 female chaperones, because you have 11 young ladies and 3 young men. So 1 male chaperone for the 3 young men and 2 female chaperones for the 11 young ladies.
And Jackie, why does Kiwanis International policy view those 2? Why is there a different ratio for those 2 scenarios? What's different about them?
Well, there is an overnight stay with the 1,
Okay.
it's 2 nights, where the day event is an activity that they're out and about in an area. Kiwanis saying 1 chaperone for the 50, but as Karen and I, we were talking, my suggestion, the best practice would be to have at least 2 chaperones with background checks, because someone gets injured, someone gets sick, and you have to deal with that child you have all the others to be concerned about. So having two there would be most appropriate.
Excellent. And so how many, show of hands, how many were surprised by that answer? And it's okay to be surprised. Remember, it doesn't matter what knowledge we bring here. What matters is what we take away. If you were surprised by that answer, it's okay, because this is a fairly new policy, right, Jackie? Like,
Yes.
again, kind of post-COVID policy to make it a little easier for those large group, you know, Kids Day at the Fair is an excellent example where you have 300 key clubbers there. You know, it eases that chaperone requirement. Harry, you had a question.
Yeah, just to comment, I have my governor's book in front of me. And while we were discussing that, I pulled it out to look at what was in youth protection. So this was the rule that was set in 2016. And of course, I used it in my years 2019, 2020. But it does say the same numbers as Jackie presented. So they did not change the numbers. And it says 1 adult for each 10 or part of 10 youth of the same gender.
Well, and remember that your youth protections that you're looking at from 2016 are what, now 8 years old?
Yeah, more strict,
So
but
those
numbers haven't changed.
Those numbers have not changed for
Right.
scenario B.
Right, scenario B.
Scenario
with
Scenario A is using a different metrics now,
Right.
which is new. There's probably no reference to different rules for scenario A in your book from 2016, because
but
that
for B,
is
for
new.
overnight stays,
Yeah,
it's the one. So with 11, you need to have 2 kids. I mean, two
absolutely.
chaperones.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's why Jackie said 2 females and 1 male for that scenario.
Yeah, and I do want to echo Jackie's point in the scenario A. Remember, we keep flipping between KI policy and best practices. KI policy is that you could take your group of 14 youngsters to Kiwanis Day at the fair with 1 person, but if somebody gets hurt and it's just you, everybody goes with you. So best practice would be to have at least 2 adults there so you can divide and conquer should something happen. Let's move to the second question. Do your chaperones need to be a certain sex in A and B? Who said that?
I would say in A, probably not, since you're only requiring 1. B, obviously we've discussed male and female, but if you go back to A too, the other question is, if you've got, 14 key clubbers and 1 adult, you better have a bus, or
Yeah,
or
you come up with
or you
a
have
whole bunch of
multiple
other
cars,
things.
so.
Or they walked.
Yeah. Let's assume that maybe they go to North High School and they just walked right out.
There you go. That works.
Oh, excellent. Yes. So in the day event where we have this new rule, Jackie, does the sex matter of the chaperone?
No, not by policy.
Okay.
Looking at the group that you are taking, it may matter as best practice.
Okay. Excellent. And then, as Harry pointed out, our policy for overnights haven't changed, and that is where sex comes in. And Jackie, the rule is what again?
Well, 1 for 10. So if you have male students going to the event, you would need a male chaperone and female chaperone for the female students. So 1 in 10.
All right, excellent. Let's move into, this was an area where Lynette had some questions, and this is another area where there has been recent change in Kiwanis International Youth Protection Policy. If the faculty advisor is chaperoning under scenario A or under scenario B, do they need a Kiwanis background check? How about, let's go with room 6. Who from room 6 wants to share your discussions? That was Bill, Candy, Dawn, Michelle, and Twyla.
I say they don't. The rest of the group thinks they do.
All right, so majority rule is yes, but let's turn to the expert, Jackie. What does KI say about this?
Well, if the faculty advisor is stepping off school premises, they would need the background checks for Kiwanis. So yes, they would need their background check. If they're chaperoning for the one-day event, they're off the school grounds. They are going to get convention, they are off school grounds. So yes, for both of them, plus the Presidium Academy training.
Excellent. And that is a policy change for scenario A, correct, Jackie? At least I think so. I think it used to be that
Well, the
faculty
last 3 to
advisors-
4 years, that's been the training that once off school grounds, they do need our Kiwanis background check to be covered under Kiwanis.
All right. So the minute they step off of the grounds, if we want to think of it as they no longer are a representation of their school, they are now a representation of Kiwanis. And we need to make sure that they're wrapped under that Kiwanis umbrella and have the Kiwanis background check. Let's see. How do school policies, and this is an excellent question for those of you like, Lori and Dawn and Maury, Lynette, who are Kiwanis advisors. How do school policies come into play when you're determining chaperones? Whether it's a day event like scenario A or a scenario B. What thoughts did you guys have on that? Lynette, do you want to share?
Well, our discussion was that we thought whichever policy was, well, you would go with the school policy unless it was less stringent than Kiwanis policy. That was our thought on it.
Jackie, how do you feel on that?
Whichever policy supersedes and has the highest number of chaperones, that's the one you would need to follow.
Excellent. So even though we might be spending a lot of time today talking about Kiwanis policies, if you're dealing with your Key Club or your Builders Club or your K Kids, and you're in a situation where you have to comply with school policies, if they hold you to a higher standard, that's what you go with. General consensus group? Harry, you have a question?
Yeah, going back to the old rule, I wonder if it was changed. The description of a chaperone is a Kiwanis member, a faculty member, a parent, or a legal guardian. Has that changed at all?
Jackie, do you know if that has changed?
I
do know you have to be over 21.
Right.
To be an official chaperone.
Chaperones, let's see. Chaperone is defined as a Kiwanian member, faculty member, parent, legal guardian, or person who is in local parents. 21 years of age or older and has been approved by the school or agency.
Yeah, that's the same. That hasn't changed.
No.
All right.
Okay.
Excellent. Rusty, I see your hands up.
Yes, on this particular one, scenario A, it's on a Friday during school hours. I assume they're being relieved. What if this was on a Saturday? Would you have to worry about school policy at all?
Oh, that's an excellent question. What do people think?
Yes.
It says the former school administrator.
Yeah, I feel very strongly about school policy being followed if it's kids related to a school program. The other thing sort of related to that I think it's unfair to have the faculty sponsor sort of be the one who tells the Kiwanis sponsor what the school policy is, because frankly, they don't know. And that, I'd hate to see something happen where they in good faith told you, oh yeah, if we have one person, that's enough, or the kids can just go ride down to the event with their parents or whatever it is, that it's Kiwanis' responsibility to make sure you know what the school policy is from,
Mhm.
well, I'm not even sure the principal. maybe I was a principal, I know. You know, there's a difference between what may be rational and what may be the rules. So I think it's really important to follow the school rules. And a Saturday doesn't mean it's not a school trip.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree with that. Jackie, what are your thoughts?
I would agree. And I would think one of the responsibilities of being a Kiwanis advisor is that they would become familiar with the school policies. And we probably don't ask them or remind them of that, but that needs to be in place.
Yeah. Good points.
That's a
All
good
right.
one I will bring up to the KI administrators for youth protection, because that would be a good addition.
Excellent. So our scenario 4, I think we covered the main points in scenario 4 in this discussion. Scenario 4 was a builders club doing a park pickup at a park down the street from their school. We learned in our scenario 3 that as soon as the faculty advisor steps off campus with their club, they have to get the background screen. If the Kiwanis advisor is attending, this is a no-brainer, right? If you're a Kiwanis advisor, you have to have a background screen, period. Would everybody agree to that? Regardless of where you are functioning in the world, you need to have that background screen.
It's mandated, yes.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting twist. So if the Kiwanis advisor, who is background screened, and let's also say that they've been through the chaperone training, if they attend, does that change whether the faculty advisor needs a screen? Anybody have any thoughts on that? So Terry, I see you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I'm saying yes.
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm saying
You
yes as
still
well,
need to
since
be.
we have a KI advisor,
Okay.
Kiwanis advisor.
You still need to be screened.
All right, so Terry's thinking that now that we have the Kiwanis advisor there with the kids, that the faculty advisor, is what, kind of relieved of responsibility, Terry? Is that kind of your thought?
Yeah,
And so
once,
maybe-
if they're on the campus,
yeah, Harry, I'm
they're
talking
under
to
the.
Terry.
Yeah.
Terry with a T.
Terry, oh, I thought you said Harry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I did that
Okay,
last
go ahead,
week
Terry.
too with Lori and Maury. So Terry, your thoughts are that the Kiwanis advisor then kind of takes over that liability role and assumes the chaperone function.
As
I
long as
think
they're
that's
present with
very-
the kids, that's what I'm assuming, yes.
Okay.
I think it's very unlikely that follows school policy.
Okay. Well, all right. So here we go back into that rule or those worlds, those colliding worlds of what does the school require versus what does the Kiwanis require. But let's assume that the faculty advisor is there. It's just the question of, does this faculty advisor need to have the background screen when there's a background screened Kiwanis advisor with the group? Jackie, what are your thoughts on that scenario?
Well, in some of my paperwork here, I have it written down, a faculty advisor attends not as official chaperone, but if it's their key club or their builders club, they're really the chaperone for that group. But
Yep.
not as official chaperone, but as an adult participant, the school background check would be sufficient. Understand policies and procedures, adhere to either our standards or schools of conduct, whichever has the stricter guidance. Not being their official chaperone, I don't know any group of young people that if their teacher is with them, they're not the chaperone, but they're not required to have the background check if they are not the official chaperone.
And so that's a policy that is put in place to kind of ease the burden of the background check on these faculty advisors when there is a screened Kiwanian that's on site. Because otherwise, you would, in this park cleanup where the faculty advisor walks down the street with their kids, they would have to have a Kiwanis background screen.
Right.
And, you know, so I suppose the decision was made at a policy level that that might be unduly burdensome on the faculty advisor. You know, if we have a Kiwani in there, they can pick up that slack. Lori, I see your hands up.
So it just dawned on me, we have co-faculty advisors, my club. Does that mean the same rules apply for both of them for everything? Or if one has it, the other one can go heavy, one can go light? Or the same route, both of them?
Oh, she died.
Yeah, so you know, that ties into, there's two different issues, right? There's the background screen, who has to be background screened. And, you know, we know that if it's an overnight or off-campus event and it's just the faculty advisors, that they have to be background screened. Both of them, because any adult in those scenarios needs to be background screened. If we have one person, or let me turn this over to Jackie if I can find her in my magical squares here. So let's go back to this concept of chaperones, because if you have that day event and you have two advisors who are there, do both of them need to complete the chaperone training to take their 14 kids, or do we just need to have one of them complete the chaperone training?
Well, one of them would be required to have the background check. Best practice would be both of them.
All right. Does that help, Lori?
So one for the chaperone as well, but both practices would be better?
Yeah, and certainly if they are attending overnights, they both have to have their background screen, and chances are they, you know, I would encourage them to get their chaperone training because, you know, you never know how the numbers are going to work out, or if, you know, somebody has to leave.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
And those Presidium training sessions are really excellent. They're if you've an educator or another area where you have to go through additional trainings consistently, you know, these are 20 minutes of going online and hearing about these specific areas, but there's always something you can glean off them as a reminder.
I agree.
All right, so I skipped ahead a couple of scenarios. We've had some great discussions, but being sensitive of time, I want to move to scenario 7. We'll go back to the other scenarios if we have some time. Scenario 7 takes us a little deeper into the youth protection background, and it goes like this. Your Key Club is helping your club sort donations at your club's back to school clothing drive. Two students approach you and share that one of the Kiwanis members keeps coming up to them and rubbing their shoulders. What do you do? Does it change your response if the student is laughing off the troubling behavior? Does it change your response if instead of rubbing shoulders, the adult had sexually fondled the student? Do you know the 6 steps Kiwanis International recommends for dealing with troubling behavior? All right, so you have this scenario. You'll have to scroll ahead in the document that was shared in the chat to scenario number 7, but let's go ahead and let's go into our breakout rooms. Can we do 6 minutes, Ken?
6 minutes, you got it.
All right, so have some discussions about this. It's a little darker turn. So let's see what your discussions yield. Well, welcome back, everybody. For the sake of time, I am going to have Jackie just launch in to answer these questions. Hopefully you guys had some good discussions. Let's see how your discussions matched Jackie's thoughts. So Jackie, you want to take over?
Okay, the Key Club is helping your Kiwanis Club sorting donations at your club's back to school clothing drive. Students approach you, and share that one of the Kiwanis members keeps coming up to them and rubbing their shoulders. What do you do? Before we talk about that, we need to remember that our SLP clubs, our students are becoming more aware of their rights, of being able to speak out and not accept inappropriate behavior. And we've had the culture of care, and for CKI and Key Clubs during the time of COVID, that training started for those young people. Then for the younger ones, there's Erica's Lighthouse and Project Happiness. So our youth have been able to take additional training so that they know what's appropriate and what's not, and that they do not have to put up with different situations that they come across. So what do you do? Our last quarterly session at KI, we talked about these particular topics, and the lawyer did say that you remove the Kiwanis member that is basically being accused of this, send them on their way, doing something else, and that you deal with the young person at the time. Does it change your response if the student is laughing off the troubling behavior? The answer is no. And suggestion that you do get from anyone that has been around the situation, that has observed, find out what they happen to observe. And also the Kiwanis member or the chaperone that's being accused. But do take the time to have them write it out, because youth, they change their minds. The one that's laughing, they'll take 10 steps down the road and change their mind, and they're not laughing anymore. They're doing the accusing. So any questions on those two? Karen, anything else to add?
No, I thought that was excellent.
The lawyer did say, make sure that adult Kiwanis member, it might be the co-chair of your committee, move them out of the scenario, get them out of the activity, and have them write up what what happened, and same with the students. Does it change your response if instead of rubbing shoulders, the adult had sexually fondled the student? And of course, the answer is yes. We all know that. You need to make sure that you are contacting the police, and that you will also have the duty to report. You may not be a mandated reporter for protective services, but it is your duty as a Kiwanian to report a particular scenario that does take place. If you're not sure what to do, you're there at the fairgrounds with those kids. Make sure that you have the helpline number in your telephone. Call the helpline, Kiwanis helpline, and they're going to walk you through what you need to do and how you need to do it. And you may say, well, I should remember those things. They're going to think that, I'm ridiculous. I do not remember. No, we all get in situations where you have that moment of blankness. What do I do? How do I handle something? And very easy for you to go to that helpline. Make sure you put it in your phone so it's easy to access. And they will definitely take you through, okay, have you called the police yet? Have you done on and on and on? And which goes along with the 6 steps. If an individual is in imminent danger, a threat is ongoing, or a law is currently being broken, stop the harm from occurring and contact your local law enforcement. Call your 911 number. Contact the event leader. Decide whether you or the event leader will report the incident. And if you have been told and seen the incident take place, you need to make sure that if you're not making that phone call, you're standing there as that phone call is being made and they'll, Protective Service will also ask you to do the write-up for it. Number 3, make sure that you've called the helpline by intake professionals will be there. They're through our Proscenium Academy. They're on there 24/7 for us. They provide guidance about follow-up and report back to the Kiwanis Youth Protection Team. And anyone can call the helpline, including members, chaperones, parents, and others. Callers may remain anonymous. After following helpline recommendations, including reporting to law enforcement, if applicable, contact the following as appropriate, which is number 4, club's Kiwanis advisor and faculty advisor, club sponsoring school or organization, Kiwanis and or faculty advisors of other youth that were involved. Maybe they were there and saw what took place. So those advisors also need to be made aware of that. Parents and guardians of the affected youth. Don't expect someone else to tell the parent. Kiwanis International Youth Protection Team. Address the incident with person or people who made or are accused of making the violation, as well as of the youth who were targeted. And please make sure you write that down. As a middle school principal, I always had the paper there for students or for anyone else involved in an incident so they could write it down, because when you think back, they start changing things and what they have written, and then they've read what they've written. That is their statement. Address if with other youth who witnessed or may be affected. While protecting privacy of those involved as possible, stop any ripple effects before they happen. And number 6, if you need additional support or guidance, contact your district administrator or district youth protection manager. But the hotline is going to give you the directions and be there for you. So any questions on those?
All right. Thank you, Jackie. And again, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of that hotline. When you're in a position where an inappropriate action has been reported to you, your mind blanks and you have no bearing on how you should properly handle the situation. So calling that helpline, I've called it previously, and sometimes it's answered live. Sometimes you leave a message and they get back to you like within 5 minutes. But they will really be your brain in that situation where you are just so stressed you don't know what you need to do. So the telephone number is in the chat, and I think I've got it. We're going to move into a discussion of resources now on the slides. And certainly that hotline number is going to be your number one resource if you find yourself in a situation where something has happened. And like Jackie said, youth of 2020, what are we, 2024, are very different than youth of 1985. And what is acceptable behavior to them is very different than what we might have let slide in future generations. So use their glasses when you're viewing a behavior, not your glasses when viewing a behavior. But so youth protection resources, there's lots of good stuff if you know where to find it online. So I'm going to put, I think I had previously put it in the chat, but I'm going to share it again. Right now, I shared the link to the youth protection page. And if you go there, there's a whole bunch of links to pretty much everything Jackie has been talking about, including, this is a practicum that we did today, applying the rules. If you want a training on rules themselves, there's a training there. There's the policies and procedures that we've shared in the chat. There's the culture of care, which is the student version of youth protection, how to look out for each other. So check out that site, open it up so that you have it for later. Here's a picture of what that site looks like, all of that good stuff that you can find there. Can't emphasize enough. Jackie's advice to put it in your phone, That's spot on. Put it in your phone. Because when it happens that you are in the situation where you need to respond, the less thinking you have to do, the better.
That's what I say.
All right. So lots of good stuff. I am so proud of this group. We had some great discussions. Hopefully we learned some stuff. You know, those of you who played sports, who played an instrument, you know that you get proficient at something from practicing it. So you guys practiced putting youth protection in practice. And so hopefully when you're called upon to make those decisions, it comes a little easier to you. So I know I can hang around for questions. I know we're at 1 minute till 11 here in Mountain Standard Time, but I can hang around. Jackie, I don't know if you're available to hang around if
Yes,
anybody has any questions. But thank you guys. Applause to you guys. Good conversations. And congratulations for surviving mid-year.
I'd like to comment that this was ideal for putting a mid-year together. It's something we needed. Trying to get together in person was next to impossible. And organizing it in this manner was wonderful. So we have to do it again next year. That's for sure.
Well, thank you, Harry. Thanks. Yeah, we will be sending out a survey to kind of gauge everybody's perceptions and ideas on, you know, this year, but then also kind of looking forward. So keep an eye out for that survey. Thank you for the input.
Yeah, and for everybody looking at all the crazy weather, come on down to the Valley of the Sun. It's going to be 75 today.
I'm headed to Florida on Tuesday, so
that'll be nice
I'm going to get out of the snow.
Where in Florida are you going?
My son lives in Bradenton now, which is just south of Tampa. Yeah.
Yep.
Rusty, I see you have your hand up. How can we help you?
And this could be just a follow on after everybody leaves, but what was the scenario if it was turned the other way? A student or somebody puts a hand on your shoulder. Do you tell them to stop or what?
That's an excellent question. Jackie, what
that is?
What are the youth protectors, protection managers thinking when you have a scenario where a student is doing something that makes you as a Kiwanian uncomfortable?
Well, you know, that question hasn't come up, but I think of saying, just like with the media and getting on, when a student goes onto your Facebook site and such, is explaining to them that Kiwanis has some policies and procedures, and this is not appropriate for students or the Kiwanian. And to try to share it that way, that it is our policies and procedures.
You know, I think the other thing that I would throw out, Rusty, you know, being one who deals with students all the time, is they're pretty comfortable with people expressing feelings. And, you know, so if somebody comes up to you, if a student comes up to you and does something, you know, if you say, hey, can you do me a favor and not touch me that way? They hear that from other students.
Right.
So, you know, I think just being honest and expressing that it makes you a little uncomfortable. We're a little bit more awkward about having those conversations than the students are.
All right.
Or that they're getting in your space and they understand that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody learn anything new today? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Excellent.
I think it's been very informative.
Oh, good. Excellent.
I will say with our Safe Hiring Solutions background checks, a lot of us have school background checks. We just had a robotics background check to be volunteers in our area for their competitions. But my Safe Hiring Solutions Kiwanis background check, when I go to see my children in Nevada or my son in Georgia, I can participate in the SLP activities in those states because my background check is valid.
Good.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I have some dogs that have been very patient about going for a walk this morning. So I want to thank everybody. I know that I've seen some faces that have been on every night. So thank you for supporting this educational conference and learning. And, I hope that we see everybody in July in Tempe for the district convention, and we'll have some more good classes there, and try to make sure that we are being the best Kiwanians that we can be. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
It was
This
nice
is-
to join.
Thank you, Jackie. Yes.
Thanks, Jackie.
absolutely. Yes.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, this is an excellent mid-year. I've heard so much good feedback about the workshop. So I'm so glad we did it this way this year. Karen, thank you so much. I know you worked hard on this, and I know Jerry was back there someplace too. But this but it's been wonderful, and people are very happy, and we really needed a lot of this right now. We needed some positive input. So thank you so much for all your hard work.
My pleasure, Mary. You have a great rest of your weekend. And see
Everybody be
everybody-
well.
Hope to see a lot
You
of you
too.
in April.
And like Yoda said, don't try, do.
Do.
Go to the district convention in July.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.